Inflammation is the cause of all diseases. Now, when you hear that, it can make you think inflammation is bad and evil. Now, in this video, you'll learn the surprising truth about inflammation, its real purpose, and why inflammation gets stuck and hangs around. Understanding this is crucial to help you control inflammation and help you feel your best. Welcome to the Ask Dr. Khan Show, where you're just one video away from feeling and being your best. I'm Dr. Peter Khan, board-certified chiropractic neurologist and functional medicine doctor. Now, there's a lot of talk about inflammation these days. Chronic inflammation has been linked to a whole host of diseases, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, GI disorders like inflammatory bowel disease, lung diseases such as asthma and COPD, mood disorders such as depression, type 2 diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, and certain types of cancers. Now, inflammation can also cause bothersome and debilitating symptoms such as joint issues, such as arthritis and tendonitis, pain. You can also get neurological symptoms such as brain fog, fatigue, depression, neuropathy, and hormone problems such as thyroid and adrenal problems. Now, while chronic inflammation that doesn't resolve leads to degenerative disorders, inflammation itself is actually a natural biological process to heal and respond and protect itself from infections and injuries. So let's help you understand its real purpose and work with it to help it run its natural course to keep you healthy. Now, most people, when they talk about inflammation, they associate inflammation with the 5 cardinal signs of inflammation. The 5 signs and symptoms of inflammation are redness, heat, swelling, pain, and loss of function. Now, those are signs and symptoms. It doesn't tell you what's causing it or what's the mechanism that drives those symptoms. So here's how it works. It starts out with some type of tissue damage or infection. Okay, so here, just lay the anatomy here. We have blood vessels here. This is your tissue, and the tissue could be your skin, where you break your skin from a skin wound. Could be your sinuses, could be your gut, could be your lung, or your urinary tract. These are hollow spaces that pathogens can enter. So once they enter into your tissue, we have a pathogen here. But this could easily be also tissue damage, where one of these cells are damaged and just floating around. In either case, when you have tissue damage or infection, these things floating around in your tissue is going to be picked up by what's called a tissue-resident macrophage. The tissue-resident macrophage are white blood cells. They perform phagocytosis, which is a process where they engulf tissue or engulf pathogens. But what they also do is they perform sentinel function. Sentinel means they're a security guard. They're basically on the lookout for things. And when the tissue-resident macrophage, what they're doing is they're sensing changes in the environment. Specifically, they're looking for chemical changes in the environment that tells them that the body is either damaged or under attack. And what are those chemicals that it's sensing? They're called DAMPs and PAMPs. DAMP stands for damage-associated molecular pattern, which are associated with tissue damage. So these are molecules that are representative of tissue damage. And then you have pathogen-associated molecular pattern, and these are chemicals associated with some kind of pathogen compound. So these chemicals tells the immune cell that we are either under attack or we're injured. And what it's going to do, it's going to send a chemical signal to neutrophils. Now, this neutrophil is another type of white blood cell. So these are macrophages. These are neutrophils. Macrophages, macro means big, phage means eater. So they are big eaters because they're big cells that can engulf a pathogen. Neutrophil, they're smaller and they have a lot of granules on the inside. These granules on the inside of neutrophil are lysozymes and various enzymes that can digest the pathogen. So hence, neutrophils are also called one of the granulocytes because they have granules of enzymes that can break down bacteria or even digest tissue debris. And these chemicals that the macrophage send to the neutrophil, these are chemical messages. In fact, that's how the immune system communicate with each other. Different white blood cells talk to each other through either chemokines, which are chemicals that help the white blood cell to follow a chemical trail to get to the site of infection, or they're cytokines. And cytokines are cellular messengers sent by the immune system to tell each other, hey, we have an infection here. We need to ramp up an attack, or we need to calm down the attack. So these chemicals here, released by the macrophage, communicate with the neutrophil, and the neutrophil will start to, by attracting, follow a scent trail and gradually come into the blood vessels. And what happens is, along with these chemicals, your blood vessel will express these adhesion molecules, and the adhesion molecules help the neutrophils to get stuck to the blood vessel so that it doesn't just get washed away. Remember, the blood vessel, the blood is always flowing, right? Think of this as a sink or as a faucet where the blood, the water, fluid is always flowing. So if the neutrophil can't stick to the surface, it's just gonna float on down and not able to get in. So it's gonna get stuck to these kind of a spike, right? And it's gonna be able to squeeze through the epithelial cells, right? Now this could be, the epithelial cells of your gut lining or of your sinus lining or your various epithelial linings. And once these neutrophils get in, and it's gonna find this pathogen or cellular debris, and what it's gonna do, it's gonna phagocytize it. It's gonna engulf it, incorporate it into this neutrophil. And remember, neutrophil has a bunch of granules, right? It's got a bunch of these chemicals, so it's going to form these pockets with all these enzymes, and it's going to release these enzymes into this pathogen or cellular debris, and it's going to digest it. So far so good. This is good, right? This is how we can clean up cellular debris or get rid of the infection. Now, once it does that, it's going to send out other chemical signals. These are, again, cytokines, and it's going to tell the big eaters that are in your blood. These are tissue-resident macrophages. It means they live in the tissue. They live in your sinus. They live in your gut. But then there are also macrophages that are just floating around in the blood. And then when they get this chemical signal, this neutrophil will say, hey, I digested a pathogen, so come and find me. So now the monocyte's going to do the same thing. It's going to squeeze through this blood vessel here. And when it gets through, what it's going to do is going to find this neutrophil and it's going to engulf it. So the macrophage is going to, the big eater is going to eat the small eater. And when it does that, the macrophage will be able to clear out through the lymph node, the draining lymph node, and basically take away this whole entire cellular debris, bacteria that's been digested, and then get rid of it, and now you have resolution of inflammation. The inflammation is calmed down, the process has stopped. Now this process that I just described to you, this equals inflammation. So when we say inflammation, this process, that's what that is. So you can see that inflammation is not a bad thing. It's just a natural process. Your body needs to use this inflammatory process to find the pathogen or tissue debris and to digest it, to break it down, and to get rid of it. That is inflammation. So it's not good or bad, it's something that's necessary. If you have an infection, this is very useful. The problem is if the inflammation doesn't resolve, then we have issues, and I'll explain why. So now, this is a normal situation where to resolve. Now, here's another thing. These neutrophils, once it engulfs this pathogen, now it starts a clock because the chemical environment where it's in the tissue is not in the blood, it's digested something, either a pathogen or tissue debris. Now it starts a 6 to 10 hour clock. It's a half-life of 6 to 10 hours. What that means is out of all the neutrophil, it's not just one neutrophil, right? Usually there's a whole bunch of different pathogen or tissue debris. You have a lot of neutrophil that are in this area, and you're going to have a half-life of 6 to 10 hours. What that means is every 6 to 10 hours, about half of them die. So over time, all these neutrophil, it's going to just end up dying. It has a 6 to 10 hour half-life. What that means is it's going to sit around, grab onto this digested pathogen or cellular debris, and it's going to keep it nicely packaged, and it's going to wait for the monocytes to come and take it away, right? Take out the trash. However, if it keeps waiting around and the monocytes don't come, they don't get cleared out, it's going to go through this disorganized death. That disorganized death is called secondary necrosis. So the first one is called a primary necrosis, or you can say the first death. It dies for the first time, and that's also called apoptosis. And apoptosis is a programmed, organized cell death that keep all the different fragments nicely packaged, so we take out the trash. Imagine if all the trash from the kitchen, if on the way out, taking out to the street, the trash bag breaks, then all the food and all the dirty stuff just breaks out of the bag, your kitchen becomes a mess, right? So if we can keep it nicely contained in the trash bag and take it out to the trash can outside, that's what this process is. However, if that doesn't happen within a certain amount of time, then these neutrophils will go through a second death. Now the second death, these neutrophil is going to go through a disorganized death. What that means is all the cellular content is going to spill out. What are these cellular content? Well, it's going to be the digested bacteria fragment. It could be your self tissue. Now it's going to float around again. Now what also is going to happen is all these enzymes, like these lysosomes, these are things that are very damaging. They digest the bad guys. That's their purpose. But they spill out. What's going to happen is it's going to damage the tissue here. Let's say this is a lymph vessel or whatever tissue, extracellular matrix. It's going to damage tissue. So now we're going to create, I'm going to draw some fire here, which is more inflammation. It's going to damage tissue, and now we have damaged tissue from these lysozyme degrading tissue going to flow out. So now we have more tissue debris. Okay? So that's not a good thing, because the more tissue debris we have, guess what else we have? The more damage-associated molecular pattern, which is these chemicals that represents damaged tissue. And the more damp we have, the more it's going to recruit this process where your immune system knows that there's a change in the environment with tissue damage, and it's going to recruit more neutrophil to come into the tissue. So we're going to have more neutrophils come into the tissue, and we're going to have more of this happening, which equals inflammation. And if we have too much of that happening, more than the capacity for the monocytes to come and clear it out of the lymph node, then we're going to have a net accumulation of these tissue damage and secondary necrosis. And now you understand why this is central to why some people have chronic inflammation, and this drives their chronic condition because they can't resolve this inflammation. Now, what will cause this situation where we have this chronic inflammation, right? If this happens in everyone, wouldn't everybody inflame? Why do some people are able to resolve inflammation and other people don't? That's a great question. The reason is because some people are creating a lot of DAMPs or PAMPs through either exposure or the way they're eating or their lifestyle, or their condition is such that it's creating a lot of tissue damage. So what would that be? Well, tissue damage can be caused by infection, but tissue damage can also be caused by blood sugar problem. One of the DAMPs, damage-associated molecular pattern, something that's in your body that represents tissue damage, is called advanced glycation end product. Advanced glycation end product comes from too much sugar in your blood, and the sugar clumps together with your cell tissue and cause damaged protein. That's called advanced glycation end product. This happens in people with insulin resistance and diabetes. So by having blood sugar problem, insulin resistance or high blood sugar diabetes, you're going to create a lot of tissue damage, a lot of DAMPs through the advanced glycation end product, which we can get a proxy or approximation for by measuring hemoglobin A1C on your blood test. So that's going to create a tissue damage that's going to persist these inflammation. So that's one way you can get it. Other examples of DAMPs will be ATP. Now you say ATP is cellular energy made by mitochondria. Isn't that a good thing? Well, not if ATP is spilling out of the dead cell. In this situation, in a secondary necrosis, ATP spilling out of dead cell, ATP in tissue is a bad thing. ATP should be inside the cell, driving cellular function. When it spills out, it tells the cells, tells the neighboring white blood cells that we got a mess on our hands, right? The bag that contained the trash is broken, and we have tissue and cells dying in droves. And this alerting the neighboring white blood cell that there's a situation going on, which triggers more of this inflammatory process. So those are DAMPs. By the way, chemical toxins, if you have exposure to heavy metals or toxins, the way toxins cause problem is that it creates what's called oxidative stress or oxidation. When you're oxidizing, your tissue gets damaged from oxidation. And this is the reason why you take antioxidants, right? Anti-oxidation to fight the oxidation. The reason oxidation is bad because it's going to degrade tissue and cause tissue damage. So toxin exposure can also create inflammation. Not to mention the infections from virus, bacteria, candida, parasites that can all drive forward this inflammation process. So the main reason why people stuck in the cycle is they have way too much tissue debris caused by various reasons and infection that they can't clear. Now, some people have autoimmune disease, and the autoimmune disease is causing a situation the immune system is damage your own tissue all the time, and that's persisting the inflammation. Now, your body has ways where it can clear out this inflammation. So one of the ways it does that is with these things called the resolvins. So we have the D series and the E series resolvins. So these resolvins, as the word implies, resolve this inflammation. Okay, under the E series, we have these chemicals called meresins and neuroprotectants. And these chemicals basically sends out message to the monocytes so they get attracted to these neutrophils that's been engulfing the bad guys, and then facilitate the monocyte to be able to take out the trash through the draining lymph node and help you to resolve inflammation. By the way, this process of your monocytes eating up this neutrophil, so you have programmed cell death and taken out of the lymph, that process, it gives off chemicals that are anti-inflammatory. It gives off cytokines that tells your body that, hey, I got this. This is all going to get cleaned up. So then it calms down the inflammation. So by getting rid of these debris, it's innately anti-inflammatory. These D series and E series resolvins help the monocyte to do that better. Okay? Now, these D series and E series resolvins are involved or are made from fatty compounds that are also involved in what's called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are chemicals in your body that can either be pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory, depends on how much of each. So for example, your omega-3 fatty acids promotes prostaglandin that are anti-inflammatory, while your omega-6 fatty acids tend to promote more pro-inflammatory states of these prostaglandin. Interestingly, Advil and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories helps to block PGE2, which is a type of prostaglandins, PGE2 blockers. These are COX inhibitors, these type of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. And when you block the prostaglandins, you actually decrease some of this inflammatory process. So this is why those medications work. The problem is Advil, you can't take it for very long. It's meant to be taken short term, right? If you follow the label as it is described on the bottle, you're supposed to take it for short term. How short is short term? A few days. If you take it long term, it has side effects. What's the side effect? Well, the Advil, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, what they do is they will shut down the production of mucus lining in your stomach. So then your stomach doesn't get protected by its own mucus, and therefore it's more susceptible to the acid, so you get ulcers. And in fact, GI bleeds from taking too much non-steroidal anti-inflammatory is one of the major causes of iatrogenic conditions, and it's also one of the number one or leading cause of death from medication overuse and GI bleeds. And Advil also is bad on the kidney because it reduces blood flow to the renal tubules, so causing your kidney don't get enough blood flow, and then that can actually cause kidney damage. So this is not something you take long term, and it doesn't solve the root cause of the problem. So what does? Well, turns out that these D series and E series resolvins The D series come from DHA, and the E series come from EPA. And DHA and EPA are what's found in your omega-3 fish oil, your fish oil. Fish oil contains DHA and EPA. And so now you understand why, when they say fish oil can help with inflammation or has anti-inflammatory effects, it's because of the effect on the resolvins, the D series and E series, helping you to clear out the cellular debris, as well as having an impact on the prostaglandins to push the prostaglandin into an anti-inflammatory type. Now, one side note or cautionary note about fish oil is that if you're already very inflamed, especially with oxidative stress, then you may not want to high dose the fish oil because lipids or fats, including fish oil, oxidizes very easily. And if your body's already oxidizing quite a bit from having too much oxidative stress, then taking fish oil can potentially feed that fire. It doesn't mean you can't take it at all. It just means that in some clinical situations, I will actually use very high dose fish oil to help people to really calm down an acute inflammatory response. But if that person is having a lot of oxidative stress, then we may not do that. Besides fish oil, what else can we do to help to improve this inflammatory situation? Well, we talked about earlier, right? It's about decreasing the amount of tissue debris and pathogen load. So we can decrease the DAMPs and the PAMPs. So how do we do that? Well, with the pathogens, pathogen-associated molecular pattern, which come from pathogens like bacteria and viruses and so forth, we can do infection control. Now, from a natural, holistic perspective, we're not using medications here, right? If you have a need to use medication, talk to your medical doctor. But from a natural perspective, what you want to do is support your immune function. So how can we support immune function? Well, sometimes you can take antimicrobial herbs. And these antimicrobial herbs may include berberine, garlic extract. It may include things like your uva ursi, cat's claw. It may include things like olive extract, artemisinin, sweet wormwood. These are things that has an antimicrobial effect that can help you to inhibit and support your body's natural healing response. You may also want to consider supporting the innate immune function and the T helper 1 immune side. We'll have other videos that we're going to talk about this, and you can check out our channel. But the T helper 1 immune system is a part of the immune system that drive immune cells that kill bugs to be more active. So we can support that T helper 1 immune system with various things like Chinese skullcap, with things like astragalus, with things like maitake mushroom and various beta-glucans that are found in these medicinal mushrooms. We can use things like andrographis. These are herbal compounds that can help these immune cells to become the type that are going to be ready for battle, make them more active and be more efficient in doing the job that your body was designed to do. As far as clearing out DAMPs or tissue damage, we can use antioxidant. Remember, one of the reasons why your tissue gets damaged is due to oxidative stress. So we can use antioxidants such as glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, CoQ10, and so forth. Another thing we can do is to support the gut barrier. When you have leaky gut's going to promote this pro-inflammatory situation where your body becomes sensitive to various dietary proteins. It creates this double whammy of malabsorption and inflammation. So healing the gut barrier to help you reduce damage, especially the tissue damage that happens within the intestinal lining, which can happen with leaky gut. Fasting may be a way to reduce the tissue damage because when you're fasting, you're promoting autophagy. Autophagy is where your cells go through this apoptosis. It's a programmed cell death where your body sheds these old and damaged cells on its own. So fasting could be a way to decrease tissue debris. Of course, you will fast only if you can handle it. Some people, their blood sugar is too unstable, they're too frail to fast. So not everybody gets to fast, but we try to get you healthy enough so you can fast, and that may require some level of work. And also modulating autoimmune disease. As I mentioned earlier, if you have autoimmune disease, your immune system is the one that's driving the tissue damage. right? So we may need to calm the immune system down so your immune system is not going after it as much. We'll have other video that's going to talk more in detail about how to calm down that volume of autoimmune message from your body so that you can experience remission and start to have better quality of life. Now you know the real purpose of inflammation and why it doesn't resolve, you can begin to take proactive steps to help resolve it. Now, if you learned something new and found this helpful in this video, please like the video and let me know in the comments if you believe you have non-resolving inflammation and what you're doing about it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already so you can get notified when I drop new content. Don't forget to share this video with someone who can benefit from this information. God bless you. See you in the next video.